Welcome to Shift Happens podcast. I'm Camila Damati, CEO of Tona Business Consulting, and your host. I created this podcast after working closely with clients and noticing a common challenge. They all had questions about how to lead transformations effectively and successfully. Here in each episode, I sit down with senior leaders to explore their real life stories, lessons learned, and practical strategies for managing organizational change. This show is for you. So I would love to hear your questions, thoughts, and ideas on how we can make it better. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Shift Happens podcast. Here, each week, we sit down with senior leaders from across industries to uncover the real stories behind managing change. From breakthrough wins to tough lessons learned, we dive deep into what it really takes to lead through uncertainty. So, whether you're a leader going through transformation or just love a good story about disruption, strategy, and resilience, you are in the right place. Because when shift happens, great leaders rise. Before we dive into the show, here's a quick word from our sponsor. Are you a leader navigating constant change and your team is looking to you for answers you don't have yet? The Change Leader program is here to help. At Tone Up Business, we work with leaders to turn chaos into clarity, retain your best people, and lead through disruption without losing trust, momentum, or your own sanity. So if you're facing restructuring, AI shifts, disengagement, or just need your people to rally behind you again, let's talk. Reach out or head over to toneupbusiness.com to find out more. All right, now on to the show. Today, we've got someone who knows that when shift happens, it's key to work very close to your team to reinforce the company's culture. Please welcome Jason Goldthwaite, President of ARC Medical Solutions, Newtown and Woburn. With nearly 30 years of experience, Jason has worn many hats, from engineering to sales and business development to now leading multiple high-performing business units producing precision parts and assemblies for the medical and aerospace and defense industries. Welcome, Jason. So good to have you here today.
Thanks, Camila. It's great to be here. I'm happy to have an opportunity to talk with you today.
Awesome. All right, so let's start with a very impactful change that you had in your life. You know, change happens, and either in our personal or professional lives. Let me just talk a little bit, understand a little bit about you from your personal perspective. Any impactful change that you like to share with us, with our audience?
Well, I mean, I've had one of the unfortunate, impactful changes in that, a few years back, I went through a divorce, after being married for quite a long time. So that was definitely an impactful change and changed the way that I, live my life and spend time with my kids and think about my career even. So it was it was definitely a big change.
Absolutely. It's not easy. I can resonate with you. I've gone through a similar change in my life years ago. And yeah, it's tough. And overall, even in the personal or your professional life, the way you manage change can make such a difference, right? So what did you do to go through change in a smoother way, if that can happen?
I mean, I think in that situation, I really had to focus on my family first. Making sure that I spent extra time with my kids who were, thankfully a little bit older and more understanding of everything that was happening. But it definitely gave me a different perspective on my relationship with my kids. And even my relationship with my ex, we have a great relationship going forward. Do a great co-parenting job and whatnot. We probably get along a lot better these days, which is kind of funny. Um, but it just, it does change your outlook on a lot of things, and a lot of the same skills that you use in the workplace I found were, pretty effective managing that, massive change in my life. And that, I had to over communicate with my kids, right? And I had to spend a lot of time, walking through how things are going to be different, but then why, was going to be good as well, and where the benefits were going to be. And as I reflect on it now, it's very similar to the change management solutions that we've gone through, and bringing underperforming businesses back to life. It is amazing how those skills kind of transfer in every part of your life.
I agree so much with you, Jason. You mentioned communication, why, and it comes the whole strategy and all reason behind the change and how you can apply in different areas of your life. Because in the end, no one likes change, but as you have to go through those changes and you see maybe the benefits and how are things going to happen after that, you say, okay, I see a light in the end of the tunnel. So yeah, that sounds good. Let's go and let's go together. Let's talk about it. And just shifting now for the professional life, as you've
Mhm.
been through so many changes, and I know before you also share with me some wonderful stories about building culture of change and all of that. Can you share one story, one impactful change story that you had in your career with our audience?
Yeah, so going back a number of years now, I was involved working with a business that was highly underperforming, and not necessarily because they didn't have good products or even good people. Just there was a lot of different areas in the business that needed to be addressed, and a lot of process that was missed and whatnot. And the funny thing is in the first few months we really fell down a little bit because we didn't manage the communication well. um, it's the old adage of, if you think you're communicating well, you probably have to do it 10x to really get through to people. And
Mhm.
while that's true, the important part is what you mentioned earlier as well. And one of the things that we've discussed previously is that the why is so important. So in the case of this business, they had a couple of new products that were coming out, and there was a massive customer demand, and we couldn't seem to get across, to the finish line to get to where we wanted to be, and we were we weren't managing the why very well in the beginning. And when we finally sat the teams down and said, look, we need to impart all these changes because our customers want twice the volume. um, if we make these products in a more profitable fashion, there'll be more available cash flow for everybody to get better raises and get better equipment and do the things that we need to do. The team really shifted the way that they thought about the problems and had a much better understanding of how to move forward. And at that time, the business took off like a rocket, and we really learned a very valuable lesson in that, being transparent and going through the why with your team can usually get them, to surround the problem from all angles a lot faster, versus that, I don't like change, I'm going to push back, I don't want anything to be different. And for me, that was a very transformative moment in my career because, I felt like I got a secret key to how to work with people and address issues. And, I've been using those skills now for the past 7 years, and handling some pretty difficult situations at times, and doing it with much more ease and the ability to bring the team along to a better conclusion for everyone.
Yeah, I love the why when you mention it's so important to first understand. And I've seen companies that they don't even know the why. So first you need to figure out the why to understand if this align with the strategy where the company wants to go, and then communicate the why. As I understand from you, you knew the why, you're just not communicating the why properly
Yep.
to get the people on the same page, right? And not only that, you managed to communicate them what's in there for them. Oh, we can get better salaries, with that, we get
Yep.
cash flow and all the consequences, the great benefits, right? For that change. So it's the why and what was there for them. So it just got them motivated, right? To join the team and work on the change together.
Absolutely. And it was, again, you think you're doing a good job of communicating, and then you really have to look at it from everyone's perspective. And I I learned a very valuable lesson through that whole exercise. You can put the best strategy in the world together. If the team's not behind it and not understanding what the outcomes need to be, you're probably not going to get to where you want to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because you mentioned communication, and you mentioned before when you're talking about with your kids, over communicate, right?
Hmm.
And in their language, in the way they will understand what's valuable for them, because with different stakeholders, you need to communicate in a different way. What's important to finance versus what's important to sales, what's important to HR, or whatever other department, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's so important. One of the things that I love doing, Jason, is when I'm communicating, I think about what I want people to know, what I want people to feel, how, right? How to feel, and what I want them to do. Know, feel, and do. To me, is just so helpful, is because then I'm thinking about them, how they are receiving this communication.
Hmm.
Aware about that. I want you to feel motivated, and I want you to do that after that. So
Right.
all these aspects of communication is something that I always like to share because it worked very well for
Yeah.
me
And
too.
yeah, and it's interesting too because so many people have a different way of taking information on. So the consideration for what they're hearing is really important because I when you're dealing with a group of engineers, in a lot of cases you got to be analytical and you've got to have a way to really connect with them. And if you're dealing with salespeople, you probably have to be much bigger picture and talking about things at a different level, because when you get to the little details, that's when you lose their attention. And same, finance, you've got to really think about the background of the people and how they will most understand the desired outcomes that you're trying to get to. And those things they're not always easy to communicate, because in some instances there are tough conversations that had to be have that you have to have. Um, but it's really important to have those conversations, especially early on. And again, if you're considering the way people hear things and what you would like them to understand, it does make the conversations a lot easier.
Yes. Just thinking communication. Another tip that I got earlier in my career was, okay, you are making a presentation, Camila. It's about the audience. It's not about you. I know it's kind of obvious statement, but we normally think, oh, how am I performing? How am I doing? No, it's like what they want to hear, what is important for them, because I'm delivering value to them, and I am basically the medium for that, right? And they are going
Yeah.
through me for the information. It's not me. Oh, am I performing? Am I saying the right things? No, no, no. It's what they want. So yes, that was a good one for me too. All right. So when you think about experiencing changing that you
Mhm.
maybe led or you were part of, any experience that was not very pleasant, like any transformational or initiative that maybe didn't go as well, and the learnings that you had during your career.
Yeah. So in that situation I mentioned earlier, we had a real issue with getting things through the shop. And we knew that we needed to more than double their production, and we also knew that, especially at that moment in time, it was during COVID. Finding people and skilled talent and everything was next to impossible in that hiring market. So we needed to find
Mm-hmm.
a way to double what we were doing with the people we had, and meet the needs of our customers. And again, we didn't do a great job of communicating the why, and the processes that needed to change on the floor were significant and completely changing what people did on a day-to-day basis in their roles. And um, without having the full why understood, it really fell down. It, we probably went through again a 3 or 4 month period where we just could not make any gains. The employees were frustrated. The management teams were frustrated. Everyone was, felt like they were bashing their head against a wall on a daily basis. And, we finally took a step back and, took it from the outcome perspective. Like what outcome does the employee going to want, and what outcome, do we need to get to from the business, and how do we get everybody around the table to provide the best information and get to those outcomes. And it was really interesting that when you engage people at that level, again, like what is it you're looking to get from them? In this
Mm-hmm.
instance, the problems needed to be better understood, and nobody understood it better than the people that were doing the work every day. And yet we didn't really take that into consideration as a management group. We just,
Mm-hmm.
said, hey, look, there's all this lean learning that there is out there, and we're going to do this, and these things are all going to work great. And we didn't really
Yeah.
think through the issue side of that from the employee perspective. And when we engaged them in that conversation and we slowed the process down a little bit, we made the goals a little more manageable. We communicated well, and we got to the those why discussions as to why we needed something to happen, and we brought it down into much more manageable pieces. The
Mhm.
process actually moved much faster. And in once we had that engagement with the people who were actively involved on a daily basis doing that work, it obviously made things a lot better. And
Mhm.
it did turn around. But I mean, I think we were probably 6 months behind where we wanted to be because we didn't, sometimes you got to go slow to go fast. And I think we were trying to go fast and we ended up going slow. Um, and again, very valuable lessons in that as it relates to, how you communicate with different people.
Mhm. I've seen that happening. Sometimes we are under so much pressure, right, Jason, to bring the results to the table. Pressure from stakeholders, pressure from, I don't know, cash flow or you name it. And then you
Yep.
need to rush and make it happen. And then we tend to forget some important steps. Sometimes because we don't know what we don't know, or sometimes because we are in a rush and we just neglect because we don't have time for that, right?
True. Yep.
And
In
it's,
in
yeah, it
this
happens.
case, it was a government customer who had, very specific timelines. The special forces was what the product was for. They had all these release dates they were trying to hit for guys that, their missions happen whether they have the gear or not. And we were
Mm-hmm.
trying to make sure that we did the best job to support that. And, again, we fell down a little bit on the front end. We managed to pull it out in the end. Um, but we could have made it a lot simpler by actually moving slower, if that makes any sense. And, in involving people and really, again, the communication piece. It's one thing to stand in front of a whiteboard and say, we're going to do this. And uh, people can look at it and say, okay, and then they're just going to go back to what is normal for them. If you stand in front of the whiteboard and you say, we're going to do this because, our customer is asking us to, here's all the benefits. Here's the things we know that are going to be difficult and we need your assistance with. We want you to start thinking through these problems that we're anticipating. And you get that level of engagement. Typically what you find out is things then move really fast. But if you
Uh-huh.
just stand in front of the whiteboard and say, we're doing this, who knows what's going to happen.
Yes, yes. And you touch in such a key part because, okay, the communication on the why, the values, the benefits, but you're also asking for their input. And that's when you build engagement, right? Because they feel ownership about the new solution. And that's so important, right? Oh, they are listening to my ideas. We are implementing, maybe not all of them, okay, but we are doing sessions, we are going through, and we, as a team, we are bringing up as the solution. And they feel part of that naturally, right? So
Yeah.
the feedback, the input is so, so important.
Yeah, I learned a long time ago that if I'm the smartest person in the room, we're in trouble. So, there's
I
usually
love
people
that
that have a
saying.
lot better ideas than I do, and they understand what they're doing a lot better. No, nobody knows better how to fix a problem than the person who lives that problem every day, right?
Yes, absolutely. 100%. That's amazing. All right. So, and think a bit about that because when we talk about change management, we talk so much about resistance. And yes, we've been talking here since we started a lot of ways to not have resistance, right? Because doing all this engagement, you're avoiding a lot of that to happen. But it's still, there are moments that will be some resistance from some people. I mean, statistically, I've seen 5, 6% roughly when you do a good change management and engagement, there's still a little bit, or a few people, right, that resist change. Do you have any advice for me and for the audience about how would you manage resistance?
Yeah, that is one of the difficult things, especially when you get down to that, that last 5 or 6%. Sometimes they can be really stubborn, and you sometimes you
Yes.
run into the people that will look at you and say, well, you're not going to teach this old dog a new trick, and this is what I do, and
Yeah.
whatnot. eh, I think just being persistent and also being empathetic is really important. So you know I don't think it's not somebody's nature to want to push back for no reason. They typically have a reason in mind as to why they're not accepting the change or why they're afraid of the change. And
Mhm.
the worst thing you can do is kind of, push through it or be a bull about, trying to make them change, especially if you don't really understand where they're coming from. And again, I think that's probably it's a hard thing to do, to sit and really listen to understand, right? Too often people are just listening to answer, and they're just trying to, like, you
Mhm.
can see the last piece of the puzzle, you're just trying to get it in place. But again, sometimes I believe it's important to slow down a little bit, and in a lot of cases the people just want to be heard. um, we definitely had those scenarios, especially in the manufacturing world, where if somebody's been doing the same job for 25 years, and then you come to them and say, "Hey, we're going to completely change what you do," um,
That's
there will be
tough.
resistance. They're not going to come along easily with that. They're going to, they'll be shocked, and they'll be. You got to take the time for them to vet to you why they're concerned. In a lot of cases, you'll find out that maybe they're afraid that they don't have the skill set to do what you're asking them to. So, being
Mhm.
supportive, being empathetic, making sure you're offering training opportunities, and really hearing what the issues are is super important to help bring people along.
I see. Yes, especially when you get highly experienced people, the thought is, okay, what is this person trying to tell me? I mean, I'm here working for all these years. I know what's the best way to do it, right?
Yep.
And yeah, it can be very challenging, but I would say that the conversation, being open and understand. I like your comment when you said people don't like to just resist just for the sake of being resistant. There is a reason for that,
There is a
right?
reason.
And really be empathetic and understand them and help them to their questions and their concerns. I
Yeah.
think that's what a great leader does, right?
Yeah, and it was interesting because sometimes you can't solve it through talking, and I can think of actual example where we were changing a manufacturing cell to be a single piece flow area, and we had an employee who had been with the company for, I think it was like 32 years at the time,
Mhm.
doing this job in one of the cells. And we went through and said, "Hey, look, we're going to change. You're not going to be doing X, Y, and Z. Instead, you're going to be just doing this one thing, and it's going to make the process a lot faster." And she, I just remember seeing the first look on her face, like, "Wait a minute, there's nobody faster at this. I've been doing this for 30 years. Now you're telling me I'm going to do less and it's going to move quicker." And we actually brought in a lean training team, and
Mhm.
we did a bunch of little exercises where they saw some, like how much faster it is to move one piece at a time versus batching things. And we did a bunch of training so that they could physically put their hands on a process that, although your mind would tell you that one way is quicker, this other thing we're trying to do is faster. And eventually she, I remember she came to me like a couple weeks later, and she's like, "I would have bet my mortgage on the fact that you guys were wrong. But now that I've
Ah,
seen it work, I'm interested to see how this is going to work out for us." Um, and it wasn't my idea; it was actually our operations leader's idea to bring in that team to do that. And
uh-huh.
it was one of the best things we ever could have done, because again, that was a company that had a lot of tenured people, and they definitely knew what they were doing, and they made great products, and the quality was excellent. And so to make a change, to them originally it just didn't make sense. Why would we change what's working? You always hear, like, "Don't fix what's not broken."
Mhm.
um,
Yes.
but not fully understanding the picture of the fact that, well, it's not broken, but at the same time our customers have a much higher demand, and we're not able to meet that demand in this fashion. So
Mhm.
um, really working through that was, again, it was, for me, these are all great learning things. I feel like every day I go into work, somebody's got something to teach me. Um, and a lot of times it's the people you would least expect that have the best lessons.
Oh, yes, definitely. That reminded me, Jason, a conversation I had in another interview, how important can be pilots when you're changing, especially when it's because here you're saying, okay, hands-on, they were doing exercises. Another way also that I've seen happening is just get a small, because it's not always possible, right? But if you can, get a small part of the process, right? Or a
Yep.
mini process, a pilot, show them how that can work, go through the change on there, and then everybody can see, realize, oh, yes, it will work, and they can trust that what's going to happen will work well, and it's a good change for them, which is basically what you did, but it was in a different way. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, it worked out really well. And I can think of an example where we brought in a new quality software in a business I was in, and um, the training wasn't the best, and the quality team, they had like a presentation on it from a salesperson, and it looked really good, but nobody took the time to do a pilot test. And so
Uh-huh.
we roll out this software, and like 3 weeks later, nothing's getting through the shop, and nobody can figure out why. And finally we start interviewing some of the people in the shop and said, where's the big holdup today? Like what's happening right now? And they're like, well, you guys rolled out this new quality program, and I went from doing 10 minutes per hour of recording dimensions to about 2 hours per hour. They're like, all I'm doing is recording dimensions, and
Oh,
I
wow.
don't have any actual time to do my job anymore because this is a requirement of the way the system is set up. And it failed miserably, and we had to pull it out, go back to doing paper sheets. Like the idea of moving to a digital system was a good one, but nobody did the pilot to find out where all the pitfalls were, and what was going to happen, and we almost ground ourselves to a stop. And again, really valuable lessons. And it would have been really nice to have a few people on the floor pilot it and say, no, 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 this, here's all the reasons this won't work right away, and here's what you got to look
Mhm.
at. And
Mhm.
again, there's always a lesson to be learned.
Yes, I agree with you. Yeah, and use these people that will do the pilot as what we call, at least in a company that I worked for before, we call power users. They will be there
Mhm.
and they will be leading when the change is getting bigger, right? When it comes from the pilot to the second phase or the final phase, whatever it is. Sometimes there are many waves, right? Or phases, but use these people that are experienced to help and to advocate from a systems perspective and also from an engagement and motivation perspective. And it works both ways.
Absolutely.
Very effective. Yes, I love that. All right, so shifting a little bit, and when we think about the challenges and well, first the vision. When you think about the vision for the next years, where do you see you or your company going, and what are the challenges, and what does it take for you to accomplish this vision?
Yeah, so we're, in the manufacturing world that we live in, we have a lot of machinists, which is a trade that I know is dwindling in numbers. Probably the biggest challenge I see is how do we maintain the workforce? Our current workforce, I want to say the average age of the employee is probably approaching 50, which is amazing when you look at it across, a few, 800 people or whatever it is. And, to think that the age is up that high.
Mhm.
So, I spend a lot of my time engaging with technical schools, and I'm trying to get the word out there that, manufacturing is still a great thing to do. And it does exist in the US. And, there's lots of great manufacturing companies, and you can make a great career out of it. Um,
Okay.
I'm old enough where I remember being in high school and getting ready for college and whatnot. And, if you weren't doing well in a class, what you'd hear from your teachers or your parents are, well, you gotta do better. You're going to end up working in a manufacturing plant somewhere, like it was a punishment. Right. Um,
Yes. Hmm.
and, especially if you look at, the 2000 eras, the dot-com boom, and, everything was computers. And even still today, there's a big push in the cybersecurity world and all these things that are going on. So, getting the word out there that manufacturing still does exist in the US. In fact, we're seeing a lot of things that had been offshored coming back to the US at this point.
Hmm.
We're seeing a lot of our bigger customers asking for us to take on work again that had been offshore for the last 5 to 10 years. But the workforce is definitely that skilled labor. People that understand how to machine parts, and know complex GD&T, and and things like that. It's just that the numbers dwindling quickly. So
Hmm.
that's going to be a big challenge. And when that's a challenge, the second part of that is we need to better understand how to use the other tools available to us. So, how do we do a better job of automating our work? How do we engage with AI and understand where those advances are going to come in the manufacturing world? I think we're just starting to scratch the surface of that today. Um,
Mhm.
and a lot of us old folks like me, I need to learn about it. We need to understand better what's happening in the technology world. So I'm excited about what's going to happen in the next few years. And again, I'm going to get out every chance I get and try to make people understand that manufacturing is a great place to be, and we'd love to have more people in that industry.
Yeah. Yes, great advice. And yes, you mentioned AI. Well, there's so many things that are coming with that, more shifts, right? Because shift happens and it's happening even more.
Yeah,
It's going to keep, I mean, the pace, I think it was one of the things, right? I mean, the changes always happen, but I think the pace of things just have been very, very fast, especially with
absolutely.
AI in our world and how we benefit from that and how we manage internally all of that, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, even just I know on a lot of the calls we have, Teams calls and whatnot, you can put an AI note taker on, and you have a full transcript of the call within seconds of when you're done. It's amazing
Isn't
how
that
fast that technology is
amazing?
coming.
Yeah, yes, I love that too. Yes. All right. So just to wrap up, in a few words, if we could summarize the secret for your success, where you are, this great journey that you shared a little bit with us today, what would you say?
Well, first and foremost, I think the important thing for me is surrounding yourself with great people. So, I've always really focused on making sure that I build teams of people that are um, enthusiastic and intelligent and energetic about what they're doing, that they have a real passion for the work that they're doing,
Mhm.
and remembering that you brought them in for a reason, and you just got to kind of let them go and give them whatever guidance you can. And in my role, I try to make sure that I'm doing the best job that I can to facilitate, the growth of their career and where they want to go, and whatever support they might need without getting in the way. I think that's a really important message. And then the other thing that I've really focused on again is I've learned more and more about communicating and good ways to do that. Is trying to coach that on, right, and make sure that people understand the best ways to communicate and how to work with their teams. And nothing's more important to me than to have my team be successful and get to where they want to go in their careers. um, I really do. It's what gets me up in the morning is seeing people advance themselves and kind of getting the most out of every day. So, and
Mhm.
that's all communication. At the end of the day, it's all how you communicate with people. And again, approaching it with a little empathy from time to time is really important. Understanding that people, if they're coming to you with a problem, even if immediately to you it might not seem like a big thing, to them it is. So that ability to sit back and really understand what's going on is important.
Mhm. Yes, that's a great way to close our podcast today. Thank you so much. Yes, communication is so important. And I love what you said about surrounding yourself by great people. Yeah, that makes a huge difference. And really keep communicating, encouraging this teamwork energy. I think it's amazing. It feels
Yeah,
good. Yeah, I love that too. I love being around nice, energetic people. Oh, I have a problem. Let me help you. And all these kind of things. It's amazing. Yes, I love
yeah.
it. I love it
Make
too.
makes every day a lot better. So, and thank
I
you for having
agree.
me. I really appreciated this opportunity to chat with you.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I do appreciate your time here. And thank you for you all that are listening to me today, listening to us. I hope you enjoyed the podcast and see you next time. Bye bye.